sprained knee after his first start against the Cardinals a couple weeks ago. The immediate story was probably won't be back for the Colts game. Well, he wasn't back for Monday's practice, and I think one thing we know, the week prior when Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't back for Monday and then wasn't back for Wednesday and then wasn't back for Thursday, and maybe he could go Friday, and then guess what? He didn't play and wasn't available and wasn't wearing pads. We're glad you're watching our video. Give it a like if you like it and subscribe to this channel.
Yep, 55% of you are not subscribed, so do that now and check out our podcast below in the description.
Also, we're sponsored by Tito's Handmade Vodka.
Check it out. #1 vodka in America.
As two people thought we would see Trey Lance this week, that's how it looks. It's trending at this point.
Listen, I don't want to be like Steve. I had this thought, and I've told you this last week when he was at the Giants game. I'm like, he's going to be fine. They would not send him to the Giants game with a sprained knee. Because when you have a sprained knee, right, or any lower body injury, typically you want to stay off of it. So I was like, he's good. Like it probably was, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal anyway because we didn't really see it. And anytime you don't truly see an injury, like when you see Nick Chubb, or not Nick Chubb, but see, it's easy
Kareem
to
Hunt.
mess up your names. Kareem Hunt, where it looks like he tears his Achilles, and then as he's like going down, reach for the back of his leg, you're like, oh my God. But then it turns out his calf, but it still makes sense. He's reaching for the back, and like best case scenario, it's like actually good. He avoided disaster. But with Trey, we didn't see anything. And then he goes to the game, like, they wouldn't let him go to the game on a sprained knee. And then he's missing practice. And I go, what is going on here? Now, I'm no medical professional. So I texted a head trainer in the NFL, and I gave him the same scenario, but with his city, his quarterback, his baseball team. And I said, if they were having a playoff baseball team, would you allow him to go? Kind of tongue-in-cheek, but being kind of serious. Like, I know I might sound a little crazy. I said, what would you do? He said,
would you let Tua go to a Marlins game?
Yes, he said, I would not advise that, no. Now, this is pro sports. These guys, even though Trey's 21, this is not college. Like, if Nick Saban didn't want Bryce Young or Love?
Young.
Bryce Young to go to an Alabama basketball game because he had a tweaked ankle, he would not go to the basketball game. It'd be very black and white, right? Same at Ohio State. You see the linebacker, I think it happened like a couple weeks ago, maybe even a month ago, like the week after Oregon. He left the game. They started tweeting at halftime. They kicked him off the next day. It's just it's closer to high school than it is the pros, even with the NIL. But in pros, like if you want to do something as a pro athlete, even if the head coach tells you no, like you have a lot of juice too. So listen, I did think it was a little weird. And then the moment he's not practicing, like I just started questioning, like, what operation we running? I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
if you have a sprained knee guy, you're not walking around on it.
Yeah, I mean, there are degrees to sprained knees. I'm with you.
It's clearly not good enough to practice.
Right, which part of me, you go back to what they said at the beginning of the week or at the end of last week, after the Cardinal game, which is he's probably not coming back for the Colts game. So maybe maybe there's been not even really much question as to whether or not he'd be able to play for a week plus.
But
right?
But it's also why I texted the trainer, because I don't want to say this and just act like an idiot, because I've never sprained a knee. But his answer was pretty just black and white. I would advise against it. NFL trainer who's had a lot of success.
You got to listen to the science, John. You got to listen to the doctors. No,
yeah.
No, it's fair. I mean, but here's the thing. It doesn't look like he's playing this week. That's what matters. And so now the question is like, is he going to be available for them the following week?
Well, if he's not practicing on Wednesday, like he's out, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Remember,
out for the game, like he
here.
might dress or whatever, but he won't be starting if he's not practicing on Wednesday.
But he might not be starting even if he hadn't been hurt. If Jimmy Garoppolo's healthy.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying,
Right.
like it'll be set in stone, basically. Like Trey's not starting this week if he misses multiple days of practice.
Yeah, I don't think he gets the same. Let's see how he looks Friday that Jimmy gets. At least with that, even though I
don't even know if Jimmy was truly getting that right.
No, he might not have. But the point is, like, is he healthy enough the next week? And if he is, then what do you do? Well, if the Niners beat the Colts this week, I'd be shocked then if Jimmy Garoppolo isn't the starting quarterback again for the 49ers. Maybe it never really changed in Kyle's mind. It changed in ours. But that's the position that Trey's in right now. And look, if the offshoot is they win a bunch of games and go to the playoffs, fine. But as we've watched these other rookies, we talked about it, like you play a game, it's hard as a rookie, there's a lot going on. You just can't wait to get back on the field again. and we don't know right now when he'll be back on the field again.
Well, I think the one concerning thing is, and it's just going to be the nature of the way he plays, right? Because he is he's such a big physical athlete, and Kyle's going to use him to run the ball. Now, will it always, as he become the full-time starter, the offense could morph, right? It won't just truly look like Cam Newton, but that's going to be an element of his play. I don't think that's really debatable, right? Is that Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson have started every game. And that, I don't think they're playing with the 92 Cowboys offensive line in front of them. And they're not running like he is, but they're lasting. Mac Jones also started every game, keeps on playing. Fields, since he's come in, I guess he tweaked his knee, I think, in one game. Andy Dalton came in for a play, but then he came right back in, and he hasn't missed any time since. I'm not overreacting to an injury in the sense of like making some statement that this guy's injury prone or anything, but it is just, when I worked in the NFL, my first year, I was in charge of inputting injuries. And like when a guy like, a veteran player gets injured, they might have a list of like, if the guy at the time, like 2010 or 11, he had been in the league since 99, he has a long list, right? Broken arm, torn labrum, just a concussion, right? Got sick, but you just have this long list. It does start like this. If you just have like his player profile, if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, sprained knee. It's just as something to like, is he, the Niners did just go through a situation with Jimmy Garoppolo, which clearly he's flawed, he never improved, whatever, but he was functional enough to keep them just in the mix if he had just never missed a game this entire time, right? If he had never missed a game this entire time, they still might have ended up somehow with a different quarterback this year, but I don't think Trey Lance is probably on the team. So just because they would have won more games, it would have been harder to get up that high. They were kind of unique because Jimmy missed so many games last year that they were high enough that they could even make the trade from 12 to 3. It was like a big issue with like the football team. It's like, we don't have enough ammo to get from 20 to 5. That's a long way to go. And it's just something to keep an eye on. Like he's one game and a half in, and he's injured. Like that's not disputable.
And what appears to be a multi-week injury, right? Like,
yeah, and it's an injury for an athletic guy knee. It's just something, it's just like, God, not ideal.
Well, there's no one's 100%, right? At this
like the
point.
Baker injury, right? The labrum, isn't that a little freaky? Like he gets slammed, he keeps falling on it. Like it's kind of unavoidable at this point now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I wanted to take the side of that could mean something, I go, I don't know, quarterbacks that size, they get thrown to the ground.
Yeah, that's what. Right. It's not a good thing.
The reality is time. We just have to wait and see. Jimmy Garoppolo now, we have multiple years where he's been injured. Hopefully it's a one-off with Trey Lance. But we go back to the way he plays. It might have happened in the pocket for all we know. One thing I loved about him in college was he clearly tries to throw before he runs. And I think I saw that with him in the NFL. Like he's looking to throw. I didn't ever feel like he left the pocket before he should have, right? You see that sometimes with quarterbacks where they get out of the pocket and you're like, where are you going? Like, no, there's nobody there. I didn't think Trey Lance ever vacated the pocket just because there was a clock in his head going off. He left the pocket when he had to go. So I do think he has a pretty good feel for what's happening around him in that sense. Would you agree with that before I make the second half of this point? Yeah. So when I look at his runs, like they were A, designed, or B, him running for his life. Ideally, you don't design however many were designed and then have to run another 8 or 9 times. Trey Lance has more rushing attempts than Justin Fields at this point.
Watching Fields against the Packers, he actually doesn't run that much.
Now, the game that he ran the most in was his first start. He had 10 rushing attempts in that game, the Cincinnati game.
Well, who?
Fields.
Oh, his first. Oh, I got you.
His first, because he came in right against the Rams, but then didn't he start the Bengal game?
I thought he started against the Browns. Was his first NFL start.
Maybe the Bengal game was the game that Dalton got hurt in, and he had played a couple of snaps in the previous game. Yeah, you're right. So his first extended action where he threw the ball more than Andy did in that game. That's where he had the most rushing attempts, was his first extended action. He had 10 attempts, and that's the most he's had this year. That's not been really a big part of his game. But we don't know yet. We got to see. That's part of the point here is we have to see Trey Lance play more. Because part of this is Trey Lance learning. Part of it is the offensive line learning to block for him. Part of it is the receivers learning where he is. And part of it is Kyle learning how to coach this guy. He has never coached a player like this. Yes, he coached RG3. RG3 was different, right? Jimmy was different. Kirk is different. Mullins is different. But Kyle has never had a franchise quarterback like this that he's trying to build a franchise around. Never. Matt Ryan was different. Matt Schaub was different.
I had someone on Twitter, clearly a big Niner fan, just tweet at me, not in an aggressive way, but just like, hey, I'm watching the Monday night game, and it looks like Josh Allen has a pretty loopy release like Trey Lance. Do you see that? Like, just asking a real question. It's a normal interaction on the twitter.com. And he does. He has a loopier release like Trey. And I really kind of honed in for like a couple series. And I'd known that. A major difference, and this is a positive, like, you can keep a loopier release. Josh just gets rid of it really fast. It's not a hindrance. It doesn't take a long time to get out of his hand. So when he decides to throw it, it just goes fast. It's just like a quick cock and it's gone. Now, but it's the same rotation where Trey's, and your point, a couple weeks ago was like maybe the more comfortable he gets, the faster it gets, and that's the hope.
Get 25% off your hydration at liquidiv.com, promo code HAM.
Yep. Also, get your gamble on with our friends at mybookie.ag, promo code HAM1. But
that his brain gets faster, and so he gets rid of the ball quicker.
Keep an eye on Josh Allen's release. It is longer in terms of like the length of it, but in terms of the time, once he sees the guy where he wants to throw, it's out of his hand fast.
Yeah.
So, because I do think Josh Allen is going to be a guy that they keep kind of, people are going to want him to be like, right?
I watched Josh Allen last night, and I said the other day that I thought Herbert's arm was a little stronger than Josh Allen's. I was watching the game last night going, that was probably incorrect. I mean, I'm sure we could get them to do a throwing contest, but Josh is every bit of Herbert.
Well, I thought the throw that he made, a touchdown to Beasley, and it looked easy, right? Beasley's wide open in the back of the end zone. He throws it.
Was that when he was rolling right and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting?
Then they go to the replay. He's at the 40. He's rolling right at the 40-yard line.
Yeah, different play.
And Beasley catches the ball 5 yards into the end zone. So that means it's 45-yard throw, and the ball was on a rope. And I started thinking, like, Dak Prescott and Cousins right now are guys that are having top 12 seasons right now as quarterbacks. I don't think either one of them could do that. Now, they could make that throw, but I think they would have to stop, gather, and let it rip. Like Mahomes, Herbert, it's like even Lamar would probably have to set his feet to not even – guys do that 20-yard throws, and that's just a bright side of Trey Lance, like having arm power, like that will be something, explosive plays when they pulled the trigger to draft him. I think they're thinking, big plays, right?
Yeah. They're thinking
Josh,
top 5 quarterback.
What separated Josh is the layup stuff now he does with his eyes closed, right? Just the basic throws. He's hitting guys in stride. Like the easy stuff, he's like an A+ at now. Maybe not an A+, but he's in the A range.
Also does some crazy things with his body that he just pops up from.
He's big. He's bigger, I think, than Trey.
I mean, he's huge. He just throws his body around in a wild way.
I talked to one of our mutual friends last night. He's been pretty adamant that he claimed that he was at multiple stops, colleges, and he begged an offensive coordinator and head coaches to sign him. They wouldn't. He said an underrated part about Josh coming out of high school that people don't talk about enough is that he wasn't this tall. And he forwarded me the picture of, that famous picture of the fireball. They were at the camp, and Derek was still, and Derek had him by about 2 inches. He was like a little under 6'1" his senior year in high school. When he went to junior college, and it's got to be a great feeling as a human being to be like, oh yeah, I just grew at 19 years old about 4 inches. Like, that's got to be pretty cool. It did not happen to me and you.
Yeah.
And so I think he grew that year at junior college like 3 or 4 inches. But he also showed me his statistics at his. He go to JC Ball in Bakersfield, I think, right?
He went to Reedley Junior College.
He was 47% as a passer that year at JC Ball. So it was like, he got bigger.
And that's not good.
Well, he just wasn't. He wasn't very accurate. So it was just. It's easy to say now. I do think it was probably at the time a lot more like people pounded the table for him were fewer and far between than like. Josh Allen, right? We kind of do the same with Trey Lance. Like, who the hell wasn't offering him? I bet if we really watched his high school film, probably didn't look like Trevor Lawrence,
Yeah, there's a clear profile of who gets offered like everybody offers, right? When you're like, oh, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, LSU, Clemson offer this guy. You can pretty much guess what he's going to look like and what his stats are going to be.
Well, I'll never forget I
Big
think it
and
was
fast, and the stats will be good.
Well, last year the Cardinals were on a Monday Night Football game, and he's an outlier body type, right? Who was getting recruited by the SEC, A&M, who I guess was in the SEC at the time, or maybe they were still in the Big 12 at the time. I think they were, because Kevin Sumlin. What do you think? SEC when they offered Kyler Murray coming out of high school, or Big 12? Probably been right at that time.
I mean, they've been in the SEC now for like 8 years, right?
Yeah, so you're probably right. They probably were in the SEC. And it came up, whatever high school he went to, which was like the Alabama of high school football in Texas, he didn't lose a game. Sophomore, junior, senior year, and he was a starting quarterback. You're like, well, it's like Bryce Young's a little smaller, and I watch him. I go, yeah, he's pretty sweet. I was at the gym this morning, and they, for whatever reason, always have like SEC Network on one of the televisions. I just look up. They have like the highlights of the game Alabama, Mississippi State, which was clearly Alabama got coached hard after that L they took 2 weeks ago. They beat the shit out of them. And Bryce, he is not, I would imagine, shoes off, Bryce Young, 6'1". Like, he does not look very big.
Yeah.
But Kyler's he's got Kyler by 3 inches.
Yeah, Kyler was committed in 2014. They actually went in 2012, so this is like year 10 for A&M in the SEC. So they were an SEC team.
Yeah.